Welcome back, everyone, to the Celebrating Singles podcast. I am your host, Christy, and I am excited to introduce you guys to my good friend, Evangeline. Welcome, Evangeline.
Hi, so good to see you.
I know, it's great to see you too. I am so looking forward to this conversation. So Evangeline and I met when we both lived in San Francisco, and we originally met through your sister. I think we're some mutual friends or both, and I'm trying to remember now exactly the story.
Yeah, you guys were coworkers.
That's right. That's right. Yes. So Evangeline, let's brag on you a little bit. So Evangeline works in tech and is based still out of the San Francisco Bay Area, but she has traveled the world and has done a bunch of humanitarian work. But ultimately, I think Evangeline, I mean, you have a long list of credentials, but Evangeline, you are such a good friend and you have been such a good friend to me over the years. And so I am just so grateful to be able to celebrate you today and your journey that you've been on in singleness. And we've had so many of these conversations offline, so I'm kind of curious to see where we go online. But I am excited to celebrate you today.
I am so grateful for the time that we're recording this, actually, because I feel like you've been in many of my significant birthdays, and the fact that we are recording this in the month of my birthday is just so special. It's like a birthday gift to me. So,
Yes, that is true. Evangeline knows how to throw down, and she has the best birthdays. So, yes, I am very grateful to have been able to partake in many of them. Yes. Well, and honestly, that's pretty cool because I think actually we weren't planning on talking about this, but Evangeline, you do such a good job of throwing amazing birthdays and bringing amazing people together. And I think what I've really loved about your birthdays, I always come away with like either deeper friendships with the people I already knew or new friendships, which is also really, really cool. Do you want to talk about anything, I guess, that you want to talk about in particular to start off of just helping the audience get to know you a little bit more, get to know what you're about? Anything that you would like to share?
yeah, so I've been on a journey of really understanding more of my own journey and my own story. So, specifically, my last birthday last year in 2023. I did a whole birthday party where I told very vulnerably, like parts of my story that I didn't get to share with a lot of my close friends. And it was just such a special time and healing time for me to be able to share with some of my closest friends some of the hardships that I've gone through in life and some of the pain and sufferings that marks my story. And one of the reasons why I did that is to, one, for my personal healing, and two, to invite others in that journey with me. And that night, I gained so much in resharing and retelling my narrative and allowing others to speak into areas of pain. And that just really experientially reminded me that like I am not alone and that my story matters and that whatever I go through in life that there's a purpose to it. So that's one of many of my birthdays.
Yes. We're
um,
just hopping right in the deep end, which I love. And Evangeline wastes no time, which I'm grateful for. Here we are. So welcome, folks, to an insider chat with Evangeline and I. No, I will forever remember that birthday, Evangeline, because it was so powerful. And I remember you literally, I mean, get done with that very vulnerable moment in front of like your closest friends, but then you hopped on a plane to go see your dad halfway across the world. And I just thought, well, how powerful, right? Of just a moment that got to be shared. And so thank you for that, because I know that was vulnerable, but really, really powerful and such a good idea for other singles to do. To be able to kind of open up that dialogue about your story, because other friends might know bits and pieces of your story, but maybe not the full story. And so I just thought you did an incredible job with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So since we're already in the deep end, we'll just continue to go there if that's okay. I would love, Evangeline, for you to share, because we've had several talks about the ups, the downs, the pros, the cons of this, state of the state, the season, whatever you want to call it, of singleness. I am curious, could you talk towards something that has been difficult in this journey, something that you've had to overcome, something that you feel like you've had to wrestle with at all? Would you be able to take us there and just help us walk through maybe what that's looked like for you?
Yeah, I think loneliness is one of the biggest things that I struggle with. And there's a narrative that like plays over and over in my mind that like, oh, I'm gonna die alone, like nobody cares. And it's a very real struggle that I still go through of am I gonna be forever alone? Is there something wrong with me? Is it like, did I warrant this on myself? Like, is this my destiny? Is this how it's always gonna be? So I just have these truthfully like very unhelpful thought patterns that I am still in the middle of like learning how to navigate that, learning how to tease out like, oh, like what is actually true versus like, am I just
Mm,
PMSing or like, am I triggered
so
because
real.
yeah, am I triggered because I saw my couple friends having a great time and I want that? Like, untangling all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So real. So real. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the bigger moments of time that I kind of like started to, I would say, realize with loneliness was I was having conversation with like multiple friends. And one of the women in the group actually talked about how loneliness doesn't go away when you get married. And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, I can be laying next to my husband in bed and I still feel deep loneliness. And I was like, "What?" Like, that just, like, blew my mind as a single, that loneliness doesn't go away when you get married. That actually, if you don't figure out the root system of loneliness, that it will still happen in marriage. And that was, like, a pretty profound moment for me because I just kept thinking that eventually this loneliness will go away when you're in a relationship or when you get married. And I just thought, "Oh, I'm not in a deep enough relationship, right? Like this person is emotionally unavailable or whatever." I kept blaming it on other people, I would say. And then I realized, oh, wait, no, this loneliness thing is a feeling that I actually have to get to the root system today so that I'm not continuing to deal with it in marriage. And it is a journey and it's a process for sure. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really interesting.
I think that's why for me, I invest so much in my personal healing journey. So for example, I use various like personality tools like the Enneagram. I know that I am Enneagram type 2 and I know you're a 7.
Yes.
and and with those comes different, I would say, like shadow sides. And for me, being an Enneagram type 2, abandonment and rejection and the fear of not being lovable is something that is very, very real for me. And that couple with my story of me feeling like my dad abandoned me when I was young, that narrative and that childhood wound perpetuated like into my adult life as well. And that's something that I am learning and still on a journey of like learning how to trace my current loneliness back to like, oh, is this triggered by an abandonment wound? Is this triggered by like something that is unhealed? And going on a journey through therapy and through other means of really restoring who I am meant to be and really gaining a deeper sense of like my identity and who I am apart from anyone else. And that's been a fun, challenging, and painful and exciting.
And everything in
um,
between.
yes, everything in between. And it's a journey. And I am thankful for friends that journey alongside with me, like yourself. So
Yeah,
Christy.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely, for sure. No, I think honestly, Evangeline, there's so much there that we could unpack. I want to call out like abandonment and rejection are the root systems of so many things that as I walk through, with various friends, different clients, different things like that, abandonment and rejection are really these two big lies that kind of plague us, especially as singles, because dating just touches on every single one of those triggers in a pretty intense way that we definitely can experience in other ways, like at work and stuff like that. But I would say, in particular, with romantic relationships or navigating either a lack thereof or new romantic relationships, those two kind of like root systems can definitely play a role. And I just love that you have been on a journey, and we're all on a journey, by the way. I would say, even if you maybe necessarily haven't experienced like physical abandonment or rejection, I just want to call out there could be emotional abandonment and rejection that people unknowingly have been, have had that in their lives, whether it be with parents or with other relationships. And so I just want to call out, I think it's really brave of you to be able to, just mention that that's been part of your journey, but also help other people acknowledge that that also might be a lens at which you're experiencing certain things at work, personally. But the good news is there is such a beautiful journey to go on once you do start to identify, wait, this has been a part of my journey, and there's a way out. And there's truth on the other side of these faulty lenses, which is exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Like, so when I first started on my dating journey, because of my past triggers of abandonment and rejection, I am an anxious avoidant in terms of attachment style. So what that means is, well, at least for me specifically in romantic relationship, my anxious side comes out. So how I explain it to other people is pretend you're giving a little child like a bowl of cereal, and like he or she are like so excited to eat that cereal, and then all of a sudden you take away that cereal and the child doesn't know when it's going to come back. So that's the anxious side. So when love comes in, I get really anxious. I'm like, oh, I'm going to grab onto it and like not let it go. And that coupled with my fear of rejection, when I first started dating, I would just attach immediately to men. And I would just be like, oh my gosh, I need to do everything I can in my power to make sure they don't leave me, because I
Mm.
don't want to be abandoned. I don't want to be rejected. I would minimize my needs, minimize what I want, and just think about like, oh, like how can I please him? Like how can I like cater to what he wants? Or how can I minimize myself so that the relationship is smooth and not like
Mm.
avoid conflict at all cost? And that's really unhealthy. That essentially,
Um,
there's like no room for me. And in my process of healing, I've learned that like, wow, like I'm able to have the language and learn that like, wow, that stems from my rejection and abandonment wound. And having language and the self-awareness to come to this like light bulb moment of, wait, I can ask like, do I even like him? Like prior
so
to this
real.
point, I asked that, like, yeah, wait, do I actually like spending time with him? Like, Evangeline, did you enjoy that? Like, did you honestly enjoy that? So
So real.
I, yeah.
So real.
So people, ladies, and I mean, I'm speaking more towards the ladies. I don't know too much about the men, but ladies, please ask yourselves, do you even like spending time with the guy? Do you enjoy him?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've talked to the men. We've actually interviewed a ton of men. And they actually say the same thing. They get this idea of who she is on paper becomes actually like more important than actually the dynamic of them in person. And with,
Yeah.
social media, LinkedIn, and all these things, right? We can totally get caught in this, like, okay, especially dating apps, right? It's like, okay, on paper, this is someone I want. Well, and then when you're in person, when that dynamic actually doesn't match what's on paper, it's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's literally like actually, I was just reading this book, just quick tangent, and then we'll get back. I was reading this book, and they were actually talking about this research, how they tried to identify 100 different pieces of information to try to predict who was going to fall in love, and they couldn't. Like, they
Wow.
studied thousands of people over 100 different criteria. They could not predict when two people went on dates, like, who was going to fall in love. And you're like, dang, that is fascinating, right? Like, that is so interesting to me. And then we've got these dating apps that are trying to narrow it down to like certain criteria, and it's working for some, it's not working for a lot of us. So, and we wonder why. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. But I love, hold on, let's go back then. Okay, attachment style or attachment theory is something that psychologists have been able to uncover, and research has been able to uncover. If you're not familiar with attachment theory, highly recommend. I actually just discovered this in the last year and a half. It was pretty tragic. I was house sitting, and I just was perusing my, yeah, I've talked to you about this. Yeah. I was like perusing my friend's library, and this book just like was just like literally glaring at me. I ended up staying up till 2 a.m. But can I tell y'all, I was 35 years old before I realized I was classic avoidant attachment. Like, I mean, you take the test or the little quiz in this book, and I was like, oh, all the way on the spectrum, I was avoidant attachment style. And I like literally had this come to Jesus moment where I was like, oh no, I am 35 years old and I have been avoiding deep connection my whole life, and I had no idea. That's real. That's real. Now, I wish I would have discovered it sooner, but I discovered it at 35. I am grateful now. The last year and a half, that's been a journey of, I like to call myself now a recovering avoidant attachment style, because I am definitely on the road to secure attachment, which is the goal for all of us, by the way. Amen. Amen. But quite the moment of realization of, oh no, I've been avoiding deep, intimate connection, not just romantically, in friendships, with my parents, with my siblings. Like, this was definitely my default, which was pretty rough to realize, and really beautiful to have that self-awareness, right? Because then it started to help me identify the ways that I was responding to different situations, both in friendships and potential romantic relationships. And I started realizing some of the stuff that was really unhealthy that I actually would have said was maybe like, I would have called it like wisdom, was actually the self-protection and avoidance working together to keep me from even exploring a concept of like a potential relationship, when it was actually just like, no, just get to know someone as a friend, and you know, it can evolve from there. So anyway, we could nerd out on attachment theory for the whole thing if we wanted to, but I just highly recommend anyone listening to this, if you have not studied this yet, there's a bunch online. There are a bunch of books that you can go to learn about your attachment style. And Evangeline made note of this, kind of inferred, and Evangeline, feel free to hop in here, but you can have a different attachment style with different scenarios in your life. So it might look different, whether it be with friendships or with romantic relationships or with your parents. But I don't know if there's anything more you want to talk about attachment theory, but
There's a lot actually. So I want to give maybe one or two like tangible examples of how someone can maybe notice that they are. So I'm speaking from an anxious side because that's that comes out in romantic relationships for me, and how that can heal throughout time, if you put in the work. So
right.
initially when I first started dating, I would get really anxious if somebody doesn't text me back, let's say within a day. Like if somebody doesn't text me back within like 12 hours or something, like I would get flooded. Literally, my mind would get flooded with thoughts of like, he hates me, he doesn't want to see me, like he's cheating on me, he's seeing other girls, like all these flooding of thoughts just like invaded my mind essentially. And at that time, I started to dig deeper into attachment style, and that's when I learned that like, wow, like that is one of my triggers. Like, and I remember one time the trigger got so strong that I was like sitting in my car before church and just like crying. And somebody saw me, and he literally, Dan States, if you're listening to this, thank you for comforting me. He literally just like gave me a hug. He was like, "Oh, it's okay. But for people who are a recovering like anxious attachment style, like it's very real. It's that visceral reaction is very, very real. And at the same time, healing is so possible. Like now, not that I don't care if people don't text me back, like it still bothers me, but I'm able to use more of the rational side of my brain and think of the best case scenario. Like maybe he's just, busy, something more logical. Like maybe he's just busy and he, is busy with the things of life and he doesn't hate me. Like not jump to like really all black and white unhelpful thinking patterns. So I do want to call out that like healing is so possible and that we all should put in the work of getting healed, because whole people heal other people and broken people hurt other people. So yeah.
Totally. No, so real. Well, so since you share an example, I'll share one of my examples actually that you were part of eventually. And I don't know if you'll remember this, but there was a time when I was like losing my stuff. I was not in a good place emotionally, and we had time scheduled to hang. And I like tried to cancel on you, and you decided to come over anyway. And I was just like, I am not here. Like I have nothing to offer in this catch up today. And you just sat with me, and you were just so emotionally present, available. And that was really healing to me, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a mess. This, I don't want to like be around someone else. And that's like textbook avoidant, is actually when you are a mess. And there's an opportunity to lean into a friendship. And actually, when we do lean into those, we do actually grow, and the relationship grows as a result. And it's totally okay to be in need. Now, if you're constantly in need and there's not any give or take in the friendship, then obviously there's a totally different dynamic there. But um, I just, yeah, from an avoidant, it's like, it's opposite, which is so interesting to hear how, our brains work and how different styles operate. Cause I'm like, oh, I'm the one that if I went on a date and I really liked someone, I'm going to wait days before I like engage with them. Or even if they follow up, I would be like, I would wait. It was just like not good on a bunch of different levels, right? So I finally have realized that. But I'm like, oh, I can't let him know that I like him too much, or I'll scare him away. Kind of like thinking, just like really bad, unhealthy thinking. So all that to say, yeah, definitely love me some learning about attachment style, and it's helped so much in processing kind of that dynamic of relationships, not just in romantic relationships, but friendships and work as well. Actually, work, oh my gosh, I totally think it plays out at work as well. So this can definitely help you in your work life.
Definitely. And one last thing is like healing experiences are so good for our neurology. Like it literally rewrites and help our neuron rewire previous patterns, and that's how we're able to adopt a new belief system. So Christy, what you said about like you having a bad day but then me still coming over, that is literally telling your neuron that like, oh, I'm going to challenge my previous belief system, and this new additional experience adds a new additional data point, and that kind of like breaks the chains, or like breaks those like old neurons that were essentially like strongholding those previous unhealthy or like just not helpful belief systems. And these new experiences help neurologically like our brain rewrite those narratives. So I think that's why it's like so important for us to be in healthy friendships and to like healthy relationships, to have these healing like real life experiences which reinforces healthy belief systems. Yeah.
Yes, so good. And how cool is it that now neuroscience has proven our brains can literally rewire itself over and over and over again, well into late age, which is just so cool to see that dynamic, and to better understand how our brain works, and how old synapses that are not used anymore literally are purged, and these new synapses get to become our literally how our brain is wired, which is so cool. So yes. Okay. Awesome. Okay. I have kind of, I would say maybe one of the things that I really want to honor and celebrate in you, Evangeline, is just how you have really, I would say, you own who you are. And you also celebrate other people's differences. You like really get to know your friends and get to celebrate, even obviously you and your sister are very different, but you really like acknowledge how different you are and celebrate it. But you also really know, you know who you are and like the strengths you carry, and you're confident in that. Not overly confident, but I love how it's like you've really found your lane and know where you're meant to run in. And so, do you want to talk towards that at all, as far as like discovering your purpose? It sounds like you've done a lot of work on that, right? To develop that in you, develop that vision. Do you want to talk towards that?
I think I'm still definitely on a journey of like understanding my purpose and understanding like why am I here on this earth? Like what am I supposed to do? How can I better move society forward? How can I better serve others? How can I better make this world a better place than when I first enter in? And it's definitely a journey. And I will say like it's a little bit funny because I talked about loneliness is something that I struggle with, and at the same time solitude is the place where I am able to connect most with myself, and solitude is a place where I'm able to like really understand how I'm wired, how I'm created, how I'm designed, and to have the time and space to even like explore those ideas and unpack more of those. So it's just so funny that it's like, I hate being alone, and also being alone is so good for me.
Wow. Okay, wait, that's really powerful, right? Because I think of so many people that I'm interacting with or coaching or different people. What I realize is just how many unhealthy coping mechanisms we've all developed to not be alone with ourselves and not actually be enjoy being alone. And for me, where we go with the online course and where I really try to walk people through is, okay, if you're starting from a baseline where you don't enjoy being with yourself or your own thoughts, then getting married is actually, in my opinion, like a little bit irresponsible. Like, okay, so I'm not a whole person. Like, I mean, literally, how many people say, oh, I married this person, now they make me whole? There is nothing that really like drives me nuts. I understand where they're coming from, that there's like this love that's coming out of them that's beyond what they knew before. That's beautiful. I'm all for that. But this idea that that you're like half and you have to find another half in order to become whole, I think is really dangerous on a bunch of levels. And it puts a bunch of things on that other person that isn't fair and really unhealthy. But so many people can't spend time in solitude. Like so many people I talk to, it's like if they try spending time alone, and I'm here on any given day too, I'm like trying to find anything, whether it's Instagram or Netflix or whatever, to not, or a Target run, any, or like I'm going to go make my favorite meal versus just spending time alone with my thoughts and actually processing some maybe unhealthy thoughts or hard thoughts, right? I'm a 7, you mentioned on the Enneagram. I don't like sad things. I'm the literally the enthusiast. Like I really like to focus on the happy excitement, excited, let's throw a party, all the things. I avoid my grief and my sadness and processing that. In fact, I didn't even think I had those feelings for like a long time. It's like, oh no, I definitely have those feelings. I just don't actually take the time to process them. And so I say all that to say I think solitude is a powerful weapon, that if you can actually get to a point where you can enjoy solitude and use it in a productive way, as it sounds like you have. I mean, what are some ways that you do? I know journaling for me has been really powerful. Is there anything that you would share about your time in solitude?
So many things. Solitude is where I think a lot of unhealthy belief will come out, and it's like what we decide to do in that moment. Do we decide to lean into it and process it, or do we decide to like dissociate and have unhealthy copanisms? And dissociation is really, in my personal journey, it's really 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 harmful. Like we are integrated beings, our mind, soul, and body, like we are is meant to be integrated, but when we dissociate, that literally leaves part of ourselves like dysfunctional. I don't know how else to explain it, and it's just it is not healthy. So for example, when I'm feeling grief, rather than short circuiting it, now I just sit with that grief and literally feel the pain of that grief, and giving myself time and space to acknowledge it, not in an unhealthy way of like, woe is me, like life sucks and I'm just gonna spiral. Not that, but it's like almost naming grief, like
Mhm.
like treating grief as a friend. So it's kind of silly, but like I imagine my emotion grief as like a friend that I talk to, and I am literally like, okay, grief, like I see you and I am not gonna abandon you. Like I am not gonna pretend
Mm.
you're not there because you are a part of who I am in this season, and I will walk with you, and we're gonna get through this together. And that's been really healthy for me to be integrated with all my emotions, because when I'm in tune with quote unquote some of the negative emotions, I'm also able to be more present and experience like so much more joy. And it just feels like the color spectrum opens up so much more for me in life now. It's like, wow, there's so much pain in this world. And at the same time, there's so much joy and beauty and like loveliness. And
Mm.
it's both, and like I don't need to hold attention. Like some days I feel 80% joyful, 20% sad. Some days I feel 1% joyful and 99% sad, and that's okay. And it changes my day. Yeah.
I love that. Well, Evangeline, I love like it opened up this like new color spectrum for you, because I also agree, again, from a 7 on the Enneagram, I completely avoided and felt very uncomfortable sitting in quote unquote negative emotions. And now I do realize that those are actually really, it's powerful. It actually is empowering to be able to embrace it. First of all, recognize it, embrace it, sit with it, go through it. I feel like for the longest time, I would like try to go around, try to go above, try to go under, try to eject. Like I would do anything except for just sit in it. And now that I have learned, I feel like it's so powerful. And then almost always, like, I'll end up having something happen within, like, sometimes instantaneously, or sometimes within the hour, or sometimes within the day, where all of a sudden this immense joy will happen. And it could be from the littlest of things, but there is like this beautiful color spectrum. I'm sure psychologists can help us understand this more, but for me, as someone who's, you know, a novice in understanding all of this, it's actually really powerful to not avoid those negative emotions. Evangeline, I have, I think, probably one last question. We'll see where we go with this, but I know we've talked about this a lot on how even, you know, sometimes we'll see people where really their vision is really about, it's all about getting married. And it's all about
Mm,
finding that partner in life. And that's really where their vision stops. And I think, you know, in some cases we've talked about maybe, you know, it's hard work to develop vision for yourself. It's easier to
yeah.
just find someone else and figure out their vision for their life. It's like, oh, this guy, he started this company and I feel called to support him. Or it's like all these things. And it's like, well, no, actually, what are you put on this earth to do? Right? Like, what are you uniquely positioned for? And that takes a lot more work to be able to develop that vision for yourself. So I'm just curious, kind of like when you think about calling, purpose, those types of things, if you have any advice for other people or anything that's worked well for
Yes.
you.
So I read so much about just like understanding myself and also relationship, because relationships are so important. So I'm gonna come at it a little bit from the science background because I love
Let's go.
science.
Yes.
It's great. So I recently found out that like a lot of people when they hang out or like when they connect, or just even couples, like they'll Netflix and chill. Like that's one of the, I don't know, like some people Netflix and chill, and that's good enough for them. But what I'm learning through just the various resources that I've been reading and studying studying about is that like actually when two people share experiences, so when two people like learn something new together, that is more bonding than just consuming
Mhm.
TV or like just like sitting and not really doing anything. But one level higher than learning something together is when two people can serve together, that really strengthen the connection and bond. And service is something that I think without understanding one's calling or purpose, it's hard to get to. So I think for me, that's why it's really important for me to understand like how am I wired and where am I headed towards in life? Who am I linking arms with already? And like where am I going towards in terms of like why I'm put here on this earth. So I think just like from that angle, it's like so interesting because I see a lot of couples and they have a lot of relational issues and it's a lot of it is like inwards, like, oh well, like you don't complete me, like you don't do what I want.
Mhm.
And then I hear that of a lot of that narrative. And what psychology is actually telling us now is that like if two people have the same purpose or like moving towards the same direction in terms of like service, that really strengthen and bonds the romantic aspect of that relationship. And I just found that so fascinating. It's like, wow, that is interesting.
That is
Yeah, so
so interesting. That
yeah.
is so interesting.
And Christy, I honestly think that's why we're good friends because
Mhm.
my love language is actually quality time. And I we don't actually spend a huge quantity of time together. And at the same time, when we do connect, it's always for bigger projects or bigger purpose. And I think that I can't help but think that like that's one of the reasons why our friendship is very strong. And it's because, like, we both know that or at least from my angle, like, we both know that it's, like, for so much more than just, like, me or you,
Yes.
and I think that's why we're able to just, like, be like, "Yes, we're friends, and we're on board."
Amen. Yes. Yeah. No, I'm in agreement. No, I definitely have felt that with you. And honestly, that is one of the things I love most about our friendship is it seems like whenever we get together, whether we're traveling or we're doing some kind of volunteer or humanitarian work together, it does always seem like bigger than us. Even when like we're just getting, to catch up one on one, you're always challenging me to think bigger and think outside myself and think outside just, vision of my own life and think about how my life is actually meant to be able to help others. And yes, like I love that dynamic about our friendship. And it makes sense that science has proven that that actually helps people grow. And I think is a key, for those of you listening, right? Like in order, if you are like, man, I really want deeper friendships or I really want deeper relationships, it's like going and finding something you're passionate about and serving in that way and building a better world for future generations is definitely going to be a great place. And I tell people like I think it's better than going on dinners for dates. Like I think there's something very attractive about a man who is serving, who is like outside of himself. I see him like being either nice to others who are less fortunate or I mean, I often joke like somebody who's like willing to take out the trash, like someone who's willing to like do the hard work in like a service project versus the guys who are like sitting on the sidelines. I'll never forget, like, there's this time where we're like literally moving beds for this like nonprofit. And I see like two guys sitting on the sidelines, and one of them, I thought was really cute and he was flirty and he's really nice and all this stuff. But I will never forget that moment when he's watching me. He's sitting on the sidelines, literally sitting on the sidelines, watching me. Like I'm sweating my butt off carrying these heavy beds. And I mean, I wrote him off. I was like, sorry, not it, bro. I don't care how cute you are. I don't care how, like you've got some skill with some banter or whatever. But I'm like, if you can't hang when there are literally women like serving, then, I bless you. You're for someone else. Not for me. So I love that science is proving, yeah, that's totally true of my experience. So this is good. Well, Evangeline, is there anything else that you feel like, I mean, I think we've covered so much today, so this has already been so rich. Is there anything else that's top of mind for you that you would want to share to encourage other people who are experiencing singleness?
I think I just want to bless, I mean, both men and ladies. And my heart goes out to the ladies specifically because I'm one and I can empathize more. And just the message that, like, you, like, you don't need someone else to fill that void. Like, there's no human that can fill that void in your soul. And to go on this journey of healing and discovering how you are made and how you can be authentic to yourself and that your voice matters. I think that's such a beautiful journey, and I just want to encourage ladies to, like, and men to embark on that. So yeah.
Oh, I think that's a message for both men and women. Yeah, absolutely. So important. So good. Well, Evangeline, this has been such a treat. We are so grateful. You've given us so many nuggets to go digest and process ourselves. I want to encourage anyone listening, there is even more content. So you can check out our Celebrating Singles podcast wherever you enjoy podcasts. You can check out our online course. It is so affordable. It's less than the price of one therapy session. You can go check it out at celebratingsingles.com. We unpack even some of the stuff we touched on today. We unpack and give you both practical teaching as well as activations to go and process this and implement some really normal everyday things that can actually make huge game changers and huge profound changes in your life. And you can check us out also on Instagram at Celebrating Singles. We will be dropping podcasts every Tuesday, so we will see you next Tuesday. Thanks so much, everyone.